You are listening to the Sacred Pathways podcast, stories and wisdom from walking the heart's way. I am your host and co-journer, Sydney Searchwell-Simpson, and I am thrilled to walk this journey with you. Bismillah. Let us begin. All right, so it is 4 a.m. I've been up for 3 hours. And you know what that means. I know what that means. That means that I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to just channel and see what shows up. I have been sitting with, what do I want episode 104 to be for a bit? And I didn't want to force it. I wanted to just see what was relevant and what was alive. And this has been coming up so often over this past, week, this theme. And then I was up thinking about this and I was like, oh, I have energy. I might as well just get this over with. So this is going to be fun because normally, or as of late, I have been, sitting with the episodes, feeling what comes through, writing a script and speaking it. But I'm just going to check and see how this format works, where I sort of just flow and see what arrives. So I want to talk about today the importance of knowing who you are in order to choose how to become. And I want to explore how we can embody the infinite in the play of identity. This is a very fun, very exciting topic for me. I love. I just love this field. I love this field of knowing myself as changeless and limitless and eternal, but then also being, in a very ever-changing, limited and temporal reality. It just delights me in a way that I'm certain will be shown in this episode. But I want to just explore how they can meet. These experiences don't have to be seen as separate things, but how they can meet and dance and expand upon each other. But before we get into that, we must first get into the importance of getting clear. Identity and misidentification, is everywhere. Not just within religions and spirituality, but then also deeply now in our modern world where there is so much discourse and so much pain and so much control over identity, which I find it's interesting to observe. And you'll see why as I speak. But I want to start with talking about the importance of getting clear. Most people, as I myself, as a person, operate in a very given and rigid idea. And I really want to highlight that it's just an idea of who they are. And this is often due to emotional pain and trauma, systematic inheritances, etc., etc. It's all very much inherited. And then what's interesting about these ideas and understandings of who we are, there are then cultural and social norms and expectations about what that means and how to be in a relationship through that. And a lot of this just happens subconsciously because from the moment that we arrive on this planet, just very, just entirely ourselves, entirely open, we are just given. And it's repeated over and over in families, in schools, in workplaces, in our friendships, in our relationships. This is who you are. This is who you must be. This is what that means. So this is just a field where we're going to play with identity. It's just inherent. And like all things, it's not a problem. We just have to learn how to be in conscious relationship to it and with it. So yeah, very often we're not choosing identity with and in awareness. We're often choosing it from that place, emotional pain, trauma, systematic inheritances, etc. Here, it's very easy to get trapped in patterns and stories and identities that are not useful for our own healing and evolution. And it can keep us in endless cycles of sowing and reaping from this misidentification of who it is that we are. And I'll share 2 experiences. It's so funny because when I was thinking about this, I was like, yeah, life just knows what it's doing. Because from as young as 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, I was just having these deep moments of fascinating. For example, I am in like a Black woman's body. I love being in this body, and I'm enjoying it for this lifetime. And as a kid, lots of people were confused about who I was because of my skin complexion, because of the color of my eyes. Lots of people would either assume that I was mixed race, and they would just be trying to navigate essentially like, who is this person? How do I relate to who it is that you are? And so sometimes people would automatically ask questions like, which one of your parents are white? And I would be like, none of them. And so there was a lot of just like confusion, and I observed, I've always been very observant, that sometimes people would treat me differently based off of if they perceived me as a fully Black person or if they perceived me as a mixed race person. And what was really fascinating about this was at like the age of 10, I had a moment where I was like, it's very interesting how people are constantly grappling with trying to understand like who it is that I am, and often just like exist with all of these assumptions. And like through that, like I am who I am. Like nothing about who I am has changed. And that was really profound because I was able to tap into a constant, eternal, true expression of self that got to exist outside of people's ideas and perceptions about who it is that I was. I want to mention this. What's curious about, the world that we live in, the systems, especially the systems of oppression that we have built from this disconnected point of being, they're so heavily rooted in body consciousness. They're so heavily rooted in cementing of ideas and divisions that are not innate truths of life. And there's also complexity because now there's culture and identity associated with it. But when I remember the fact that race is an invention, it was an invention in order to specifically place white-bodied folks and the small definition of who was included in that back then onto a higher pedestal, and for every other person who did not qualify as a white person, a white-bodied person, to measure themselves according to that creation of a caste, of a higher value of humanity, apparently. But the systems of oppression are so heavily rooted in body consciousness. And because those are real realities and experiences that folks who exist beyond the margins of what is considered appropriate and valuable in this world, we can navigate tricky territory because these are real experiences that can't be denied, but we also have to understand that these real experiences are grounded in an untruth. I'm aware of the fact that the experiences of systems of oppression that are rooted in body consciousness, that are rooted in division, exist and are real. And I'm also aware of the fact that these systems are grounded in untruths, and so I'm not going to give it validity where it does not deserve validity. What I want to say here is that the trap of the systems of oppressions grounded in a limited body consciousness is that it keeps us trapped in trying to prove the validity and dignity of these, of the body, of being in a Black person's body, Indigenous person's body, and being in a woman's body, and being in a trans person's body. Like all of it traps us in the sense of I need to prove that I have value and I have dignity. And in that point of proving, we become trapped in an identity that we built in order to survive within the system of oppression. But there's so much freedom for us to uncover and to express in our relationships between one another, because the untruths of systems of oppression, they explicitly create disconnect through our relationships. And that's also the point in which they can be healed. But it's important and incredibly liberating for us to ground into the truth that the lie of white supremacy ingrained in so many of us, that we are actually inherently, innately, dignified, virtuous beings, worthy of love, worthy of peace, worthy of freedom. And that's what we can get caught in the trap of trying to prove that and prove that and prove that and prove that when there's actually nothing for us to prove. That's the truth. And you can deny the truth if you'd like, but I'm connected and I am building, and I invite you into, when you are ready, into the community of people who are ready to live by that truth. Because when I acknowledge that in myself, I have to acknowledge that in another person, that they too are inherently dignified beings, worthy of love, worthy of freedom, worthy of peace, worthy of acceptance. Those are the truths that no system of oppression can offer any of us. And so that's the truth that I want us to ground into, is that there's nothing for us to prove about our inherent innate dignity at all. We just need to live in it. We need to live in it, and we need to accept and embrace folks who are ready to live in it as well. So back to the point, this experience of realizing that there was a deeper, eternal, ever-present, unchanging, constant truth to who I am that existed beyond the perceptions people projected onto me was one of the first experiences that made me understand that, oh, I am not limited to this body. Another experience I had, this was in 2021, where, long story short, a puppy had bit a chunk of my lip off, and I didn't realize it. I didn't feel any pain, like, at all. And I only realized it when, like, I think it was my brother was like, Sydney, you have a hole in your lip. And I was like, what do you mean I have a hole in my lip? Like, I feel fine. That was another experience that had me realize I wasn't the body, because when I was in the hospital and I was waiting to get, what's it called again? What's that thing called again? What's that thing? Stitches. I was waiting to get stitches. I just remember sitting there and being like, this is really fascinating to actually feel. Like, I'm aware that I have a hole in my lip. I'm aware that it has to be fixed, but I don't feel it. Like, I'm here and I feel perfectly fine. And these experiences tapped me, like, just naturally tapped me into this agelessness, this timelessness. And I was able to, peek into what exists between and beyond the ever-changing thoughts and bodies and ideas and perspectives and perceptions, and just ground into something eternal. And as I've now intentionally ground into knowing, experiencing, being that through getting clear, and there are many ways to get clear, I now know, okay, like, this essence doesn't have the fears and anxieties associated with personhood, the fear of death, the fear of aging, the fear of having no control, the fear of the past, the fear of the future, the fear of not having control of how I am perceived. Like, those don't exist within that eternal state. And my grander question in life nowadays, knowing this, being this, is how do we ground into this truth, what some may call the ultimate reality? How do we ground this truth into the experience of life, in this human body, in the complexities, in the personal identity? And I think a lot of that has to come with getting clear and also refusing to play the game of performance. Now, this is important. Again, and I think it's just an important discussion to have, and not even discussion, but just an important thing to be aware of this fear of the ego that exists in quote unquote spiritual circles, religious contexts, this fear of this person, this aversion. What it is ultimately is aversion, and aversion is just another way to form attachment. But I don't think the point is to deny, and I don't think it's necessarily helpful to build aversion to identity, to the person, to the ego. I don't think that serves our purposes of evolution, of humanity. I don't think that the purpose of spirituality, which is the purpose of living, the purpose of reality, is to get rid of the ego or to get rid of the personal reality. I feel like a lot of that is rooted in misidentification of who it is that you are, and ideas. Here we are once again at ideas. It's so important to be aware of your ideas and see that they're just ideas. It's the same way. It's important to be aware of your opinions and see that they're just opinions. They're ideas of what a spiritual person should do or be, or what we are told, a spiritual person should be. And it can often feel good to be like, yes, like I don't have an ego. I don't have a person. I don't blah, 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 blah. But I think it can also easily become performance. When you do this, a part of you feels like you are not playing into the game. You've left the game, but you're actually playing so perfectly into it, and that's okay. You don't have to punish yourself or shame yourself. That's just another thing to keep you in this endless cycle, this hide and seek, this game of a disconnected personal identity. I think it's an ego ultimately trying to hide from itself, and that's a very great trickster. It's just trickster energy. And so I think it's important for us to understand why and question, why is the ego trying to hide in the first place? And that's just because it's afraid. It's afraid because we are approaching the ego as this thing as like, I have to get rid of you, and I'm going to get rid of you by doing all of the things that I have been told or taught or seen or modeled that spiritual people do, and that will be that. It's funny because I experienced in my own journey how even with the most pure, loving, sincere intentions of being in service, which is something, I really am like, yeah, I want to be of service, no doubt on the planet, how that can be hijacked by a disconnected ego, an ego that is not grounded in truth and reality, by having that subtlety of me, my service is about me. I have to make sure that I am perceived a certain way by being of service. I don't have value in this world unless I am of service. We can be doing things and thinking we're doing things and actively be doing things from a very sincere place, but it's amazing how much power a disconnected ego can have on the truth of who it is. Let me not say that, because it can't have power over the truth of who you are, but it can have power over your idea of who it is that you are. And so I just want to bring awareness to just how subtle it can be. And it can be subtle when we're trying to constantly repress the fact that the ego exists, and that's not a problem. Because here's the thing. If the spirit wanted to get rid of the ego or the person or the personal identity, it would choose to not be in a body. Easily. Problem solved. I don't want an ego. Okay. Ciao. But that's not the case. Your spirit, who you are, wants to be here. And it chose to be here in a body. We chose this experience in this moment at this time. And the more and more that we can just accept and embrace that, God, the doors just open up about what is possible, and curiosity about why did I choose? These are not things to just think about intellectually, but to feel through, to live your life through. Why did I choose to come into this body at this time? If there's anything that I think that we can learn from what we call the great masters of humanity, the Buddha, Jesus, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, they were not floating, disembodied essences or orbs, They could not change the world from that point. They knew that. They were in the body and they experienced all of the things that this body allows, but they did this rooted in the unchanging truth of who it is that they are eternally. And they use the body as a tool, the wonderful tool that it is, the personal identity as a tool that it becomes when we are deeply connected to truth, to demonstrate a compassionate, loving, honest, and a virtuous way of being in this world. And from this point, their doing stemmed. This is something I think that humans forget too often, that they all in some way, shape, or form expressed over and over and over again that they are not special, to not put them on pedestals, and to not see I need to be exactly like Jesus. There's this wonderful story. I believe it is within Judaism. And please excuse, I'm missing lots of details, but ultimately there was this grand teacher who was on his deathbed. And all of his students that he has led and guided in this life came to gather around his deathbed to ask, are you ready? Are you ready to meet God? How are you feeling? Like all of these things that come at the end of life. And the teacher, the rabbi, had said, I'm afraid. And they were like, what do you mean you're afraid? What are you afraid of? Like, all of your teaching was about, like going home to God, being one with God, meeting this being, this entity of love at the core of life. What do you mean you're afraid? And he had said that I'm not afraid that I'm going to meet God at the end of my life and God's going to ask me, did you become Jesus? Did you become Moses? Did you become the Buddha? Did you become XYZ person that we put on a pedestal? I'm afraid that I will not have the answer to the question that God will ask of, did you become yourself? Did you become yourself? What I'm trying to express through this story is that to put these people on pedestals, it does not mean to discredit the wonders and the beauties that they were able to realize through their sincere way of being. But to put them on pedestals of being better than, holier than, is to miss the whole point of their teachings. To see them and all of those before them, those known and unknown, as demonstrations of what is possible when we are firmly rooted in self-knowledge of our eternal, loving, free, and limitless nature, and use this body and personal identity as a means to express and experience those virtues and wisdom, I think is the point, is to really see you are no different from me. We share something, and you are just a mirror of a possibility for me to awaken to and realize, oh yeah, that existed in me too. I completely forgot. But what grace, now I remember. You know what I mean? Yeah. There's just something really alive and present around that right now. It's so great for us to know and ground into what folks might call like the airy, ethereal goodness. But you can't get stuck there. Experience that and ground that into reality. And wow, the kind of world that's possible. Oh my God, it's so good. It's already so good. I mean, it's already doing that. God is already doing that inherently. I feel and I see, when you just look at the natural world that is uninhibited and unchanged and unimpacted by humans that have identified with a disconnected ego for millennia. I mean, we do live on heaven. We live in heaven already. We've just created a hell out of it. And maybe that's the process that we have to walk through in order to remember and realize, oh, we can experience something entirely different, But everything, people talk about heaven as this place where all of your needs are met and blah, 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 blah. I mean, that's earth. Can you not see? And you can't. And that's okay because it's the way of the world right now. But you are capable of returning to that. So now finding balance between our eternal, loving, free, limitless, infinite, courageous nature and the limited, temporal, ever-changing nature of the human, of this life, this physical life on earth, is the constant practice. And I feel like sometimes we have to swing between the polarities of body consciousness and complete disembodied transcendence in order to find a way of being, that middle path, that middle way that actually expands and amplifies the gifts of both experiences, which really are not both. They're one right here, right now. And I can only share from my own path and process, like that has just looked like me making way for the truth of who I am, an expression of life, an expression of God, clearing the space within myself and the many things that make up the self, the mind, the energetic body, all of that, and the heart, creating spaciousness so that truth can flow freely. Truth wants to flow. Truth, like life, wants to flow and evolve and express and go, but it's only these barriers that block it from being realized. So what blocks truth? Ideas, opinions, attachment to emotional pain and trauma, all of this block truth. And those, knowing that, it can give us pathways for us to actually unblock it ultimately, Yeah. So this required a lot of unlearning of who I thought I was. Again, the ideas, so many ideas. Oh my God. And coming to a point where I realize now I don't, and I'm constantly realizing over and over again, life took me on a journey this past weekend of I forgot that I chose to have the experience of myself as truly eternal and infinite. And I get to explore that through the realm of change. How fun. So I can't arrive at a destination of myself, the state of being that great and simple and eternal I am that you cannot think yourself into and you cannot think yourself out of. You just are it. You are it. It is so open. It is so vast. It is so endless. It is everything and nothing and so effortless. It's always there. It's always here. It's what we are. And I think one of the greatest practices, and I borrow this from Muji, dear Muji, is just to give yourself space in your time of sitting in meditation to drop it all. Drop everything outside the door, and you can pick it up if you want. You can decide to pick it up when you leave this room, but just come enter this room, come enter this ocean, come enter this garden, come enter this beauty of the truth of who you are, of what life is at the core, at the heart, and sit here and ask yourself, and don't think with the mind, just be here. Can this leave? Can it go? Can it be created? Can it, can it do anything but be here? And then it's just a matter of our awareness of it. Our awareness attunes us to what is always here, what will always be here, what has always been here. This is why, one of the few identities I actively embrace is an artist. It just feels very true. And the clearest way for me at this moment, at this time, for me to express this eternal, infinite nature that I know myself and all beings to be. And that's also the other practice, is not just knowing yourself as this, but coming to witness and see and honor this in every single being, every expression of life that you meet. Being an artist, I just honor the fact that there are endless ways in which I can and wish to express and create. And this becomes a pathway to choose who I wish to become from that knowledge that I am limitless. And that I have endless possibilities unfolding within me. I just need to decide which ones I wish to explore and to experience and to express and c'est ça. And I have eternity to do that over and over and over and over and over again. But right now I'm here. And right now I'm right here. And so I know who I am right now. What do I choose to become with that information, with that experience? I think it's important to also accept that our minds cannot truly conceptualize or understand what infinite and eternal mean, and it doesn't have to. It's not a problem to be solved. Our minds are brilliant problem solvers, but our minds can also try to create problems to solve that are not actually problems. Eternity and infinity are not problems to be solved. It's just what is. Maybe I'll share a little bit about the experience I had this past weekend. So I have been navigating ultimately how to live from this new knowing of who it is that I am and what it looks like to actually embody it, the limitlessness in particular. I have a field of possibilities before me, and I used to operate in this field from like deep attachment of like, oh my God, there's one right way and there's all this pressure and what do I choose, and how do I make sure I get what I want, XYZ. It was a lot of pressure. I'm so grateful by the gracious process that life and God led me through to be like, no, I don't want to relate to life that way. Like, I want to explore and honor the fact that I have time, infinite time, and I want to use this time choosing from truth and expanding my capacity to love. So anyways, a brilliant pathway outside of me that models what feels true and now in my heart has opened up to me because I've opened up to it. And I had to walk through a little bit of a grieving process of letting go of the stories I was living in, of doubt and fear that were blocking my excitement and my embrace of this beautiful possibility for me to, again, deepen my experience and expression of who it is that I truly am as a limitless, eternal being. And it's funny because I remember having, like, when I was sitting with and watching and witnessing the fear, one of them was this, from this saying, I said, I never ever thought or could have planned that I would do anything like this. But it feels so true. It feels so real and true and alive with potential. And this clicked, like something clicked inside of me when I had said this. I was like, oh yeah, like I remembered. I was like, oh right, I forgot. I'm infinite. I'm completely infinite. You know, that's the nature of the soul. That's the nature of God. And because of that, there are infinite possibilities and pathways for me to experience and express and explore who it is that I am. And part of that includes things that I never thought of, you know, that cannot be contained by the realm of thought. So in walking this path sincerely, I'm going to keep meeting moments like that, you know, where I'm like, oh, I never thought I would do that, but hey, it feels right and true. Like, let me go into that and just see what happens, you know, completely free, completely unattached, just being like, this feels true. This feels in alignment with the love I know myself to be. Life, this is what I choose. Let's see what happens. If it's in flow, amazing. You know, if it's not in flow, amazing. Moving forward. So it's a gift. I realized that this was a gift given, you know, to experience my infinite nature, that knowing that anything is possible, all things are possible, through the courage of the eternal, knowing that I cannot die, and I have no fear of death. Like, what's holding me back? It's it's inevitable, the death of this body, the death of this personal identity, in which I get to experience this unique expression of the infinite, and I get to play with this, and through that deepen my experience of the limited, of the changing, of the temporal experience of life as it exists at this time on this planet. And through that, the limited, changing temporal life is just given so much life and vivaciousness and wonder and magic and beauty. It's so gorgeous. It's so gorgeous. It's expansive. It's just expansive. And I think that's what I want to really close on, is expansion. How can we, in embracing the full truth of this reality, of our eternal, infinite, just like unchanging nature within the realm of the changing, of the temporal, of the limited, how can we honor both of those truths and allow it to expand the path of possibilities? So I want to just remember us to return to personal identity, having a person, having a body. It's fine. It's okay. It's actually needed for you to be here in this world at this time. It's a tool, and it's a tool that we can we have to tend to so that it can fulfill its purpose. We have to make sure that the personal identity is clear from the projections and attachments and identities and narratives that get us so tangled in, and if left unaddressed, identified with untruths. That's why humans are in this thing that we're in, with this like ecological collapse, systematic collapse, immense division, immense pain and exploitation and suffering. We have become so disconnected, so disconnected. And I don't think that that's a problem either, because it can be a pathway for us to really fortify our connection. But anyways, when the personal identity, when the person is clear and present and open, that which is vast and limitless, empty and full, loving, eternal, infinite, peaceful, and one, fully one with what is, it can express itself through the person. And the kind of world that is possible with more and more people expressing this through the person is just so unbelievably godly. It is divine. It is so loving. It is so tangible. When I feel into that world, it's like, whoa. Yes, let's do it. And what's beautiful about that is that it's not in some faraway future. If I can tap into it now, like it's here now, ready to be realized through each and every single one of us. It's funny because one of the things in intentional healing therapy is like, actually within Seeds of Knowledge, which is a really amazing book that I use in my own intentional healing therapy sessions that I do with myself and with other people. But it was a channeled book from the Truth is Peace movement, which Claire, the energy healer that introduced me to intentional healing therapy, who I will also be doing an interview with soon, which I'm very excited for, is a part of. She's a part of the movement and helped write down this book. And so one of the truths in the book is that you don't have to identify with anything but your spirit, but your essence. Be essence. That does not mean that you dissolve and disappear and whatever from your body. It actually grounds you more fully into it, more fully into your body. When you are really connected to your spirit, you are so present and so clear in your body. It is fantastic. You don't even have to identify with it because you are it. You are your spirit. You are essence. It's who you are. So it all goes back to being, constantly returning to being. It's funny because I was actually, I was editing the manuscript for my poetry book. And when I was going through, I was like looking at what was put in there through me. And one of the things that came through was just like, I was sitting in this anxiety of like, what do I do? Or like, how is it all going to happen? And just like a lot of that. And how am I going to make what I want to happen? Classic attachment to outcome, all of the goodness. And in response to that, clarity, spirit, truth, God wrote, like, you don't have to make what you want to happen. You're not the doer. And when we are in a very grounded state of being, everything becomes done through us effortlessly. And when we have those moments and experiences, it just strengthens us more and more to continue on that path. So I really do wish that for you, that you continue to open up to those experiences that allow you to really let go and drop fully into being who you are, who you have always been and who you will always be. And honoring that now you are here in this once in a lifetime experience of a once in all lifetimes person. And what do you, the eternal you, the clearest you, wish to experience and express through this once in all lifetimes expression of God? It's so exciting. I think often about the kind of world that would be possible if humans decided to just stop wasting and directing energy and resources towards exploitation, judgment, hatred, racism, being right, making others wrong, war, protection, etc. All of these choices and behaviors are just creations rooted in disconnection from truth, and because of that, they can only continuously create more of that. Like, we have to stop sowing those seeds. We have to. And when we do, we'd have so much more energy and resources to connect with and experience and express truth. We'd probably realize that we already have all of the resources we need to ensure that no one on the planet dies of starvation or dies from thirst. We'd probably stop polluting rivers, and we'd probably stop extracting resources from the earth as if they are ours to possess and to control. We'd probably make glorious paradigm-shifting discoveries or innovations in science and technology that could better the world, not just for ourselves, but for all that we share this temporal experience with. We would grow food in a way that replenished the earth and support the health of the ecosystem. We'd raise children and educate them in a way that inspires self-knowledge and discovery and expansion into their gifts, into their callings, connection with who it is that they truly are. We'd feel and see and build and dream and create, explore, express from and for the clearest expression of who we are. And love, oh my God, that love, the kind of love that would flow through everything we are, through everything we create. Oh my God, it's amazing, y'all. We'd build, and we can build, ways of living and loving and being that support folks in being, sharing, and communing in what is true. It's all so possible. It's all so here. The possibilities are endless, but you have to first recognize and declare for yourself, I am here. I am here. And what could this mean for the world? That, my friend, is entirely up to you. If you are interested in sharing your heart path story, art, or in sharing a paradigm-shifting conversation on the podcast, you can find the application in the show notes or the description bar. There you will also find links to join our community on Substack, where I share personal and emergent audios related to the episode themes and my personal process of living and being another way. Come engage and connect with other listeners and co-journers in the gatherings and conversations held only on Substack. You can also find the link to my website, Jivan Mukta Healing, to learn more about the work that I do to be of service to the world at this time. Until then, I wish you and your beloveds peace and presence on the path and journey. Connect soon. Thank you for listening to Sacred Pathways, stories and wisdom from walking the heart's way. As a budding show, I would be incredibly grateful if you supported this podcast by giving us a rating, sharing this or any other episode with your loved ones in person and online, and letting me know in the comment section below how this episode resonated with you. Engagement is lovingly received and appreciated if you have received value from this. See you next time.